with fall sports seasons coming up, getting into a lot of the same questions that have been driven into people's minds for decades in terms of strength and conditioning and sports performance. One of those biggest urban myths is that when season's coming up, then you should stop training and stop strength training. Again, no matter what the sport, this myth has been proven time and time again to be wrong and just based in bad experiences from decades ago, bad experiences from having bad training programs combined with in-season work, and just in that general, and just being misguided. So like in truth, a good in-season training program with weights, not body weight, things like that, those have their place, but a good in-season training plan for every single sport in the world only makes your athletes perform better. It both increases performance, it makes them continue to improve throughout a season, it keeps their body able to perform at high levels through the later parts of a season. One of the scientifically proven risks to not training in season is that your body will start to actually break down and performance will decrease once you get about 6 weeks in, and at that point, and also you start getting a higher injury risk if you're not training. So it keeps you healthier. Better performance, increasingly improved performance, and a decreased chance of injury are all associated in every single sport when it comes to training with weights in season appropriately. Now, so I want to show this with one of the biggest sports out there that has this mentality, and that is distance running. So again, if there's out of the sports out there, there is a general trend that the more endurance-oriented the sport is, the greater that belief that those athletes should not train in season. And most of the time, they're worried about overtraining. Sometimes they think it's going to make them slow. And again, all of those things are urban myths, and I'm here to put them to rest. So I want to actually show you something specifically. So introduce you to one of my old training programs from actually 12 years ago. So some of the athletes that I've had the great honor to train and become friends with were some of the top endurance athletes coming out of Morgantown, and including the professionals like Metcalf, now Megan Wright, and Clara Grandt, now Clara Santucci. And said Megan particularly was an Olympian in 2008 for Canada in the Beijing Olympics with 5K running. And again, 5K running is a very hard race. You have to be fast, you have to have that endurance. And here her training cycles in. Also very grueling is the training. People don't realize it, but a lot of times with 5K running, the biggest switch or the biggest emphasis is on total mileage with light training. So she would actually get to the point of 110 to 130 miles per week before she started backing off training for Beijing. So here is actually her training program back then. See, once that opens up here. And okay, so these are her cycles. And now the date Beijing happened in middle of July. So this is that entire spring going through. But see these dates, January, February, March, and coming down through a little bit in June, pretty much. But you also see a lot of these cycles are broken up by races. There's a race very end of May or beginning of June. Sometimes these dates change. Then also, there's a race here in April. There was a race here in March. And this entire time, she's training right up to them. Even including to sometimes, look right here, training, even having a lift sometimes the same week as her race. And so to a lot of coaches or even athletes, they think that that's just, that just blows their mind. But that training all the way through is what helps you continue to develop, because these athletes realize that it's not about being in the best shape for literally, or in the best recovered shape for literally every single performance. It's about continuing to get better and being at your absolute best at the most important point in time. Naturally, in this point, going to be the Olympics. So that happened basically here. So really just about 4 weeks out, so about a month, but from the biggest peak of your life with the Olympics. And that includes traveling to China, being set up, Olympic Athlete Village, all that stuff. So really this break is even a little bit shorter than it seems, because so much of it was based on readjustment. But I said full training seasons all the way through race season. And you got to think some of these races, they're primers, they're races, you're racing other pros. These are big races that you might have to actually hit certain times on building up until that. So the idea of training in season is something that almost all successful athletes do, but unfortunately there's this great urban myth that athletes should actually not train and stop training in season, especially when it comes to weights, and especially when it comes to endurance sports. And here we have Clara Grandt and now Clara Santucci's one of her training cycles as well. And we see so one of the best races of her professional life was the Boston Marathon. And you can see here where that date is highlighted. And she took 2 weeks off of lifting preceding that race. So she trained all the way from July through through to April, just taking those 2 weeks off before the Boston Marathon. And she was one of the highest ranked American women, highest ranked newcomers, and again, it was one of the best races of her professional life. And like I said, it was all about coming up here. Here's 10K Nationals. Again, this is a national championship she had in October. And she trained up until the whole week before that. And actually, you can see where my note there, 10K Nationals, strength endurance 5 rep test. She actually lifted that week of nationals and then came right back and went back to training the very next week. And here's another race that had another lift in that same week. And here's cross country nationals, another lift that week, and then right back to it. So again, athletes at the top of their game will be training in season. Don't let urban myth or people you know or just people you know tell you otherwise. If you want that true greatness, if you want to really see how much you can succeed and maximize your own development, then you need to be training in season with somebody who knows what they're doing. So as you can see, getting athletes to understand and embrace the process of training to be their best self, like training nearly year-round, knowing when to pull back on the brakes, and knowing what to train, the speed, what speeds, what intensities, what exercises, which workouts should be longer and shorter, all those things, those are my passion. And so there's a lot of urban myths going around, and I want to try to educate as many people as possible on the truly best way to do things for their situation, at least with those general rules that they can then follow. Hopefully get with a good professional. We're always looking to take on committed athletes, so if you're interested in training with us, by all means send us a DM or even comment on wherever you see this. And so really helping everybody see how to find the best situation for them and develop to the best process. Because I guarantee you that, unfortunately, a ton of people that you run out there just don't know any better than the things they've heard all over the place. So again, Coach Jerry Hanley here, Viking Performance Training. Thanks for listening this far, and good luck to everybody. Make your ancestors proud.